Welcome back to my Ascot Quilt Along. It's week 6 and we're going to make the Amish star block. You're going to need 4 3¼ inch squares in background fabric for the flying geese and 4 3¼ inch squares in background fabric for the half square triangles and 4 2½ by 4½ inch squares. In fabric A, you're going to need 8 2½ inch squares. In fabric B, you're going to need 4 3¼ inch squares. And you're going to need 1 5¾ inch square. And in fabric C, you're going to need 1 4½ inch square. Make your very own sampler quilt with the 9-block Ascot quilt pattern. Scan the QR code or visit the website today. Let's get quilting. We will start by making the small half square triangles using the background fabric, which is 3¼ inches in square, and the fabric B, which is 3¼ inch square. So to make the half square triangles, we need to draw a diagonal line on the wrong side of the background fabrics. So when I do this, I start drawing in the center and out to the corners to stop the fabric from dragging underneath the pencil. And then I'm going to pin these right sides together with fabric B. And I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam on both sides of the drawn line. I can't really see that drawn line, so I'm going to do it again. So I'm going to take those over to the sewing machine. So I'm going to remove the pins and then I'm going to cut along the drawn line. So these now need to be trimmed to 2½ inches square. I'll show you how to do that with a standard square ruler, and then I'm going to use my favourite ruler, which is a 6½ inch triangle square up ruler. So the first thing we need to do when cutting with a standard square ruler is to press the unit. Now I'm going to set the seam and press towards the darker fabric. So with your square ruler, you need to line the 45-degree line of the ruler along your stitch line, and then you need to lay the line the bottom and left edges at just more than 2½ inches. and then you want to trim along the right and the top edges. Then you rotate the unit round, place the ruler back on top of it with a diagonal line running along the seam line, and this time you need to line the bottom and left edges up at exactly 2.5 inches, and then cut along the side and the top. So that is your 2.5 inch square, half square triangle trimmed to 2.5 inches. So now I'm going to use my favoured ruler, which is the Quilt in a Day 6.5 inch triangle square up ruler. So when using this method, you don't need to press your units yet. You need to leave them folded and then line the 2.5 inch marking in the ruler on top of your stitch line, and then you need to trim up and down. So I'm going to continue doing that with the rest of my units. So now we need to press these units. So we need to set the seam and press towards the darker fabrics. And then to finish these, we need to just cut the dog ears off. So these now need to be made into 4 patches with fabric A. I'm just going to check my diagram. Yeah, that's what they need to look like. So I'm just going to put that up in the corner there. So I'm going to begin by sewing these in pairs. So I'm going to take those over to the sewing machine and sew with a 1/4 inch seam. So back over at the ironing board, I'm just going to lay these out in their little 4 patches. And I've decided I'm going to press towards the full square. So I'm going to set the seam and press. So now we're going to join these together in 4 patches. Because we've pressed the seams in opposite directions, they will nest together. So I'm going to take those back over to the sewing machine. Now I'm going to set these seams and I'm going to press the seams open for a flatter finish. So we're going to set these little 4 patches to one side. And now we're going to start making the flying geese. Now for this you're going to need the big square in fabric B and the small squares in the background fabric. We're going to need to draw a diagonal line on the wrong side of the background fabrics. So we're going to be using the 4 at a time method for making these flying geese. So once we've done that, we're going to take one of these squares and we're going to place it in the corner of the large square with the diagonal running down through the centre of that square. Then we'll take a second one with the diagonal running in the same direction. We're going to place that in the opposite square. Well, sorry, the opposite corner. So I'm going to take that over to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam on both sides of that drawn line. So I'm going to remove the pins and then I'm going to cut along that drawn line. Now we need to press it. So I'm going to set the seam and then I'm going to press towards the small triangles. Now I'm going to take the 3rd and the 4th squares. I'm going to place one of these in the remaining corner of the large square and the diagonal line needs to intersect these 2 small triangles. And I'm going to repeat it with the 4th square. I'm going to take that over to the sewing machine and sew a 1/4 inch seam on both sides of the line. So back at the work table, we need to remove the pins and cut through that drawn line. now these units need to be pressed. So I'm going to set the seam and then press towards the small triangle. And now these need to be trimmed, and they need to be trimmed, just checking my little sketch, they need to be trimmed to 2.5 by 4.5 inches. Now I like to use my Ultimate Flying Geese tool to do this. If you don't have one of these and need to use a standard ruler, then please right click on the link above and it will take you to a new page with my video on how to trim flying geese with the standard ruler. And when you do that, you need to be trimming them to 2.5 by 4.5 inches. I'm going to use my Ultimate Flying Geese tool. There is a link to this tool in the description of this video. So on this tool, it works in finished sizes. So that's a 2 by 4, which is on this ruler, the D markings. So I line the D markings up with the triangle, the flying geese piece for trim number 1. And then you turn the unit around and you turn the ruler around and you line up again lines D with your flying geese seams, and then you trim along the side and along the top. So I'm going to continue to do that with my other flying geese. Okay, so now I'm going to set all the pieces out in the block layout. Just going to refer to my sketch to make sure I get the flying geese in the right direction. There we go, it's looking pretty. So what I want to do now is join the flying geese to the rectangles. So I'm going to take those over to the sewing machine and sew with a 1/4 inch seam. So back at the work table, I need to press these seams. I'm just going to lay it out again in block layout, because if I can, I want to see if I can press the seams so that they will butt up with the seams I've already pressed for these 4 patches. So this seam's going up, and I would probably press that going towards I pressed these seams open. So I'm going to press these seams open as well. So I'm going to start by setting the seam and then pressing it open. And by pressing it open, not only will it get a flatter finish, but I will also be able to match up those points. Okay, so I'm going to pop it all back into block layout. So I've laid it back out in block layout, and now I'm going to sew the top units on to each of these columns. I'm just using the positioning pin technique. I have a video on how to get perfect points. If you right click on the link above, it'll take you to that video to give you a fuller explanation of what I'm doing here. So I'm going to take those over to the sewing machine and sew with a 1/4 inch seam. So I'm back at the block layout. Just pop these in the right place. That's that one there. That's that one there. And this one here. I've sewn that on the wrong way around. So I'm just going to quickly unpick that and then I will rejoin you. Okay, all sorted and sewn in the right way. Now I'm going to sew these bottom units to these columns. So I'm going to take those over to the sewing machine. So back at the ironing board, I'm going to pop these into the block layout. I think I'm going to press these seams open to get a flatter finish. Okay, so I'm going to pop these back into block layout. And then I'm going to pin these two columns together. I've pressed the seams open, so I need to pop the pin in the seam about 1/4 inch down, and again on the other side, to make sure that those seams are going to join up together when I sew them. Now these have a point, so again I'm going to use that positioning point technique. So I'm going to sew that seam with the flying geese point facing up towards me. So back at the pressing board, I'm going to lay this out. I'm not going to press it yet, I'm going to join this side first. Okay, I'm going to take that over to the sewing machine for the last seam. So back at the ironing board, I'm just going to set the seams and press them open. So there we go. That is the Amish style quilt block complete. Well done. Congratulations, you have made the Amish style quilt block.